Do your golf grips look like this? Shiny, cracked, slippery? That's no good. I'm going to show you how to change them. What you need, what you don't, and how to do it the right way. Let's go. Hi everyone, I'd like to thank you for checking out our video today. I'm AJ, the mobile club maker, and today we are going to be talking about regripping a golf club. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to show you the tools that you need to do it, the ones I think are a must-have, and then some things that I maybe use that you might want if you plan on doing this for more than just yourself, but otherwise just the basics to get you started. So for starters, the first thing is a vise. This is, I think, definitely a must-have. You want to have a vise. A vise is basically, it's like an extra set of really strong hands. And when it comes to any sort of repair, having an extra set of hands is a good thing. So, a good vise. I've got a vise here that I use for different things. I also have a different vise that I actually use for regripping, which is called a quick release vise. This is a quick release vise over here. Only difference is it has a lever, opens and closes. You can quickly take clubs in and out of it versus your standard vise. You have to wrench it open, you have to wrench it closed. They do the same thing. They will both work perfectly fine for this. It's just a matter of convenience. If you're only doing your own clubs, if you're only doing a couple clubs or one club, regular plain old vise, perfect. If you plan on doing a lot of clubs, then something you might want to look at, a quick release vise. Next thing you're going to need is a vise clamp. That being something that looks like this. This is basically something that you put the shaft into and put it in your vise so that you're not clamping metal or graphite directly into your vise, which would be bad for your shaft. So one of these, definitely, again, this is a must-have. These cost all of about $2 or $3, I think you can get them. So definitely something you will want. Next thing, you're going to need grip tape and grip solvent. These are the two things that you need to actually do the regripping work. Grip tape is a two-sided tape, so it's sticky on both sides. One side sticky, sticks to the shaft. The other side sticky, sticks to the grip, holds it in place. The grip solvent temporarily takes that sticky, tacky adhesive, makes it slick so that you can get the grip on. Then the solvent dries, the adhesive gets sticky again, the grip is stuck on there, you're good to go, you can swing the golf club. Next thing you will also need is a utility knife. But you don't just need any utility knife. You need a utility knife and you need these hooked blades, also called roofing blades. If you go to a Home Depot or a Lowe's or an Ace and go trying to find them there, they will often be called roofer's blades. And it's basically a utility knife blade with a little hook in it. It fits in any utility knife. It's the same size and shape, so you don't need a separate knife. You can use the same knife and just change out blades between the hook blades and standard blades. But this is what you're going to use to remove the old grips. Very useful tool. I would not recommend trying to do this without a hooked blade because very easy to injure yourself or damage the shafts. So definitely something else you want to hold on to and make sure you can get those grips off. First thing to do, put the club in the vise. Now, a word of caution. Anytime you're regripping clubs, and this is especially important with graphite, steel is pretty sturdy, you can beat on it pretty good, it's not going to usually cause any issues. Graphite, it's a much more fragile material. I say graphite, carbon composite shafts. You want to be much more careful. I can tell you I've seen on numerous occasions people cracking shafts or damaging graphite shafts because of how they put them in the vise, they tighten it down too much. So definitely something you want to be paying attention to. If you're just starting out and you're going to start practicing on grips, start with your steel shafted clubs if you have any available, because that is a simpler process. You're less likely to damage anything. Then move on to the graphite where you can be more careful and more exact. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to take this grip off. You basically take the knife, you want to hook it under the rubber, pull the knife back towards you, always keeping your other hand in front of the knife. Don't put your other hand on the golf club and try and pull this knife or you're going to cut your hand. Keep your other hand up in front. You can use it to help stabilize the club or just keep it off altogether. Another thing when we're talking about steel versus graphite, with a steel shaft, you can go ahead, you can hook this blade right under, point it straight up and down, pull it down, no issues. With a graphite shaft, again, that carbon fiber is much more fragile. So when you take the grip off, I like to turn the knife a little bit. I will sort of pick the edge of the grip up, have the knife at an angle, and really try to only cut through the rubber of the grip and not even touch the shaft itself, because I don't want to scratch or cut into that graphite material. So, but for this case, this is a standard steel shaft. We can just cut it off. So I hook it under the rubber, get my other hand out of the way, start cutting, pull it straight down, all the way off. Now it's basically like peeling a banana. Just kind of work both sides off. Start with one side. Again, these grips being pretty old, they may chip, crack a little bit, but if you just work at it for just a little bit, it'll come off. This one broke into a couple pieces. That's okay, simple to get those off. Well, now we've exposed the old tape. And lucky for us, actually, most of the tape just came off with the grip. It's still stuck inside there, which is a good thing because it saves us some work. You always want to take all the old tape off, okay? There are going to be some people who are lazy and they will just basically take additional tape and lay it on top of the old tape and regrip it. You can do that, but it's going to change the size of the grip. It's going to change the feel a little bit. So unless you're trying to make the grip a little bigger, I say go ahead and get all the old tape off. This tape is pretty simple to pull off. I can pull it off basically with my fingers. Doesn't take much effort, as can be seen because most of the grip tape came off with the grip. If it gets a little bit hard to get off, you got a couple options. I like something like this. Heat gun, you can buy at any hardware store. You use it to remove wallpaper, stuff like that. You can also get them at golf supply websites. Turn this on and we'll get the rest of this tape off. We just heat up the adhesive a little bit, makes it softer, and you can peel it right off. Of course, be careful after you've been running the heat gun. The shaft will be a little bit warmer. Just make sure you don't burn yourself. If you want to wear a pair of shop gloves or thick gardening gloves, those are always good options. But you can see I just heated that up for a few seconds and all that tape basically just peels right off. Other options for doing this, you can also use a utility knife with a straight blade and scrape off the remaining tape. You can do this with a steel shaft, but you don't want to do this with a graphite shaft, obviously, because again, you can cut right into those graphite fibers, damage the shaft, and then you're now going to have to be reshafting the club instead of just regripping it. So, but with a steel shaft, again, it's sturdy. We can take this utility knife, run it around there real quick. We're good to go. Okay, so now we have a nice, clean shaft. When we lock it into the vise, we want to make sure we do it with the head, the face of the club, sitting perfectly perpendicular to the ground. So the head is sticking straight up and down. That'll make it much simpler when we're trying to line up the grip. If there's a logo or something like that that we're trying to line up, that way we know we're getting it on straight. So I'm going to open my little tray here. One more piece of equipment that I didn't mention before, but that's important and useful when you're doing regripping, is a bucket or a pan or some sort of tray to catch the solvent, because the solvent's going to get all over the floor if you don't. Secondly, grip solvent is reusable. You can capture it, pour it back in the bottle, use it 10 times or more. It'll still work just fine. So no reason to waste it. Capture it in a pan of some kind, pour it back in the bottle, and you can reuse it. I like to use a simple painter's tray. Painter's tray, you pour paint into it, get your paint roller, but it works perfectly for grips. It's about the same size, slightly longer than the grip. It's shallow, so it's out of the way. I just stick it right here underneath my grip, and it'll catch any of the solvent that runs down. How much tape do we use? Well, I think the best rule of thumb is use a piece of tape the length of the grip you're going to put on. When you put it on the shaft, it's actually going to play slightly shorter because you're going to let it hang over the end slightly, but that'll leave the perfect amount so you don't have tape sticking out past the grip looking like a sloppy job. So I put the grip down, pull out a length of tape, get it to be just about the length of the grip, get my scissors, and cut. All right, here's my tape. Next thing you have to do is you have to take the backing off it. All right, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna lay the tape right down the middle of the shaft on top. We're gonna let about a ½ inch hang over the end. Okay, so we've got it right down the middle, about a ½ inch, maybe a touch more, hanging off the back. Now, we're going to take one side and we're going to wrap it around, get it nice and tight on there. Now we're going to take the other side, we're going to wrap it around, get it all nice and smooth. If we have any little bubbles, anything like that, you don't need to worry about that. You're never going to feel them under the grip, but just go ahead and try and smooth them out as best you can. Now, this little bit of tape on the end, we're going to sort of pinch it and twist it. And basically, we're just making a little cap at the end because the grips all have a hole at the very end of them. So we put a little of that tape at the very end just to keep dirt and debris out of the shaft so you don't get stuff rattling around in there. Next, grip solvent and the grip. There are a few different ways to do this. People are going to tell you, some people like to use a T and stick it in the hole in the end of it to keep the solvent from coming out. Some people use other methods. I just like to use my index finger. I hold the grip like so. I put my index finger over the little hole in the end. Okay? Then I'll take the solvent and I'll start pouring it into the grip. Now here's one of the big tricks with gripping. People will all the time get stuck and the grip will not get all the way on because they don't use enough solvent. Like I already said, the solvent is reusable. You can catch what falls off the grip and reuse it. So don't be afraid to use a lot of it. The more you use, the simpler it'll be to get the grip on, get it on right, make sure it gets all the way on the shaft. So don't be frugal with the solvent. Let it pour, okay? So what we're gonna do, I'm holding the end, got my finger over the hole, and then the other end, I'm gonna take the solvent and I'm gonna give a couple squirts into the grip, okay? I've now got the solvent in here. I'm gonna take my thumb, cap off the other hole, and basically just rock it back and forth a couple times, just kind of coat the inside of the grip, okay? Once you do that, I take my thumb off the one side, keeping my finger on the other side. I'm now gonna use that little hole as a little directive spout that I can just let the solvent pour down and onto the tape. I wanna coat the tape as much as possible. Get the tape good and slippery. If I feel like I didn't get quite enough on there, I'll take a little more solvent, put a little more on there. Once you do that, real simple. You want to start at about a 45-degree angle, get the end of the grip over the end of the shaft, then bring it up to parallel, slide it all the way on, okay? Here we go. Over the end, slide it all the way on. There we go. Goes on real smooth. As long as you have enough solvent on there, you will not have any issues. Now, at this point, I like to give it a little press at the very end. Make sure I've got it all the way on there, that it's not flopping around. Then you want to make sure you get your logos lined up the way you want them. This one I'm doing logo up, so I want to make sure it's lined up correctly. That all looks good. I'll take it out of the vise, bring it over to the mat here. Give it a couple wraps on the floor just to make sure it sets fully down. Again, you don't want any wiggling around in the grip. That's the one thing you can do that'll really sort of mess up the whole process, is if it isn't on there all the way. But there you go. We have a grip on the club. This club's gonna feel like a brand new club now. Probably give you about 25 minutes, 20 minutes, depending on how much solvent you use. If you use more, give it a little more time to let the solvent dry before you actually start hitting the club. But definitely within 30 minutes, you should be good to go. You can take the club out and hit it. That is basically how you do it. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button or subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you again. Keep it in the short grass. Thanks.